don't be mistaken. The 4,600 banks, 4,400 of those being smaller than 50 billion in assets. It's the lifeblood of America. It's the reason that Michael can go and place a real estate deal in any part of America.
Right.
That's the lifeblood, and it's the secret sauce.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. If you're a business owner or entrepreneur, you've no doubt dealt with a bank for the start and growth of your business. Everyone interacts with banks, but most underestimate the importance of that relationship. Today's guest is Brian Pillmore, the founder and CEO of Visbanking, an innovative platform designed to transform banking intelligence. Today, we'll learn the story behind Brian, why he focuses on strategies for a new era of banking, and how that can help you in your quest to access funds driven by intelligent actions.
Brian, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thanks so much, Michael and Tanya. Great to be with you both.
This topic is truly interesting to me, mainly because I'm always seeking new lending sources as a real estate investor. And also maybe we can get into it if it fits the genre of what you do, scalable banking. Going from that street level banking to that business level banking to that, higher and higher levels of banking as your company grows. So, but we like to, we always like to start with a brand new guest to find out a little bit about that guest. And so tell us a little bit about your background, like what led you to that financial space.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I came out of school in the early 2000s and as an engineer and really as a guy that's super comfortable on a manufacturing floor, love designing new physical products, widgets and hardware and software, and never thought I didn't, other than having a credit card and a checking account. That was the extent of my knowledge of banking. And so I worked for a really large company at the time. It happened to be called General Electric. You probably have one of their refrigerators or washing machines or something at your house. And I was designing hardware and software for a business that made computers that go in factories. And I wanted a leadership opportunity within General Electric. I wanted to kind of get on the path. And I found out from my boss that path was like 10, 15, 20 years in a very eye-opening conversation where I expressed my interest in leadership. And she said, "Oh, Brian, you're doing all the right things. Another 10 or 20 years, and you too will be a leader." And that wasn't my timeline, in case like it might have worked for baby boomers, but it didn't work for my generation. And so I made a shift and I moved into accounting and finance, and I worked as an auditor for General Electric for 3 years. Traveled all over the world, half the time in Europe, half the time in the US, and went to 10 different GE businesses. And in the middle of that time, the financial crisis hit. The Great Recession of 2008, led by asset bubbles and contagion in residential mortgages and other assets. But I happened to be sitting in a securitization business, one of those fun big words, in March of 2008. And my boss called me into her office on a Friday morning and told me that I was going to go on Sunday night down to a different town that was a short drive from where I was in Connecticut, go to another town and meet this guy, and he would fill me in. Come to find out, from April to August of that year, we started a bank. I knew nothing about banking before that. We essentially built a team. I was one of the first 3 team members, built a team of 20 people, and we went from a basic bank charter that existed in Utah that GE owned. And that charter was kept active with call it 20 million, 25 million of credit card receivables. And we took it from 25 million to $11 billion, an $11 billion bank in 4 months. And we acquired the second largest equipment financing company at the time from Citigroup. So did essentially a bank startup or bank launch and a large acquisition. And I was hooked. Why was I hooked? Well, the number of different challenges in banking, the problems you face, but also the lack of limitations.
Right.
If you're working in a manufacturing business, there's only so many things you can, do to a widget, right? There's like physical limitations. In banking and financial services more broadly, if it's legal and if the customer wants it or will buy it, you can do it. And as long as it mathematically works, right? I mean,
right.
The sky's the limit in terms of product design. It's all about what the customer wants, and creativity thrives. I met some super, super smart people within banking, but I also found that my engineering mindset, problem solving skills, and so on were differentiated. I was a dime a dozen within a manufacturing world. There's lots of smart engineers and stuff. Within a banking or financial services space, most of these folks, they're very much relationship people.
Right.
At best, they went to business school, tried to avoid calculus at all costs, that kind of thing.
I love it. I love it. Well, this is fascinating to me.
Very fascinating.
I know Michael is constantly like chirping in my ears, like, oh gosh, that bank says they can do this, but they can't do that. And this bank says they can do this, but they're not big enough to scale with me. And so this goes on and on. So I know he'll probably have more questions, but I want to start with the question, what is Visbanking? Tell me a little bit about the vision and the company.
I like to say I lost my job before it was cool to lose your job. In January of 2020, my job I had the top job in the state of Oklahoma for a regional bank, and they cut me loose in January 2020. Greatest blessing of my life, because it was like a forcing function. There are lots of things that my wife and I talked about doing 2 or 3 years down the road. I said, hey, I need 2 or 3 years to turn around this bank, get it going, and so on. And then we'll do something. We have a young family, 4 kids. And we'll spend some more time doing some travels, helping them to see the world and grow as humans. In January 2020, we just moved all those plans forward. And I took about 2 weeks to do nothing, which I highly recommend for anybody that has lost a hope. God willing, you're able to do so. But I did nothing for 2 weeks, and then I got after it. And I've been busier than ever since then. But I did a little consulting. I took some back burner projects that I had interest in, one of which was Visbanking, and moved them to the front burner. And I built what I always wanted as a bank president. I built the data and information tools that I always wanted. I talked to a banking leader this morning. They said banks are sitting on a treasure trove of data, and none of them use it.
Right.
And they said the 2 root causes, this banking leader this morning diagnosed it well. She said the 2 root causes are, number one, the business leaders don't have the capability to do it. And number 2, they're so busy trying to just keep up with and stay compliant with what they're supposed to have done that they can't focus on a sort of nice to have of business intelligence and data analytics. So I built what they don't have to spend time on. And it's essentially, we call it a bank intelligence and action system. We think that data should be visualized. You should gather intelligence from it, but it's like, for an analogy, it's like reading your Bible, but then like putting it on the shelf or something. Right.
Right.
This is like data, like you have to breathe it in and then you got to breathe it out, and breathing it out means you have to take action with it. So we believe that business intelligence isn't just to stay in your head. It's to move your feet and to move your hands into action. So we built this bank intelligence and action system, and it has data from financial information, performance information. Michael, you mentioned, I need to know, can this bank scale with me? I need to know not just, hey, they did my last deal, which was a multifamily deal, but I got an office deal or a strip center turnaround or whatever coming up. Have they done much of that? Or more importantly, did they do any last quarter?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because banks, they can shut the spigot off with the flip of a switch or with the command of a credit officer. They switch the spigot off, and your deal, if it's in progress, it's dead in the water. And you'll have somebody blowing smoke, where the sun don't shine, because they'll be saying, hey, we could do your deal. Well, that was old news. They could do your deal, but they can't anymore.
Right.
Because the credit officer is full up on that, or they just took a loss in a multifamily deal and they've sworn it off, forever, or until
Yes.
they need to do it.
Yes.
So that's what we help, whether it's banking leaders, vendors to banks, consultants, or industry people that I would call broadly bank stakeholders. Like if you're a real estate investor using any amount of leverage, the bank is probably a bank relationship is probably more important than your own equity or your equity investors. Because it may be bringing 60, 70, 80 cents on the dollar to the deal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So would this product help the consumer to see that with
it would. It's probably a little high price for most consumers.
So it is more B2B product.
It's B2B.
Yeah. I mean, which is still good.
Anybody can buy it.
Right.
And I would say if you're doing a significant volume of real estate deals, we have one customer that's in California that's actually happens to be a loan broker or a loan placement agent. He's helping commercial real estate investors place loans all around the country. He's using he's actually one of our most frequent users from our analysis of our own customer login information and traffic and so on. And he's using it every day for on behalf of his customers to, instead of going to 50 banks and sending your package to 50 banks, he sends them to 3 banks.
Gotcha. He uses your product to narrow down. These are the 3 top picks.
He doesn't send to any dead ends.
Gotcha.
He's sending to banks that are of the right size, that are putting on loan volume in the asset class that he's trying to place.
Mm-hmm.
So who would
That's
you
awesome.
say are the most ideal customer types for Visbanking?
Really, it's anybody that has a significant stake in a banking or multiple banking relationships. So I would say that, first of all, it has to be a high value stake. Like it has to be the lifeblood of your company or be a very high value portion of your business. Of course, banks themselves, the sweet spot being banks that are sort of 50 billion in assets down to, call it 250 million in assets. Mm-hmm. Above 50 billion, they probably have their own team that's doing all sorts of customized analysis. Below 50 billion and above 250 million, they have the resources and the wherewithal, and they would benefit economically from having our service. About today, half of our customers are vendors to banks or consulting in some way, like this loan placement agent. The other half are bank executives themselves.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can it be used for even targets for acquisitions and things like that?
Yes. I think initially in a consolidating industry like the banking industry, right? In 1984, there were right around 15,000 banks. 12 years ago, there were around 10,000 banks. And today there's a little less than 5,000, about 4,600 banks. So consolidating industry. But what's interesting is number of employees since 1984, between 1.9 and 2.1 million, just fluctuates. It's been relatively flat over that whole time period. So you have a consolidating industry in terms of number of companies. It's like John Deere dealerships, right? Mm-hmm. The dealerships keep getting bigger, but there's fewer owners of those dealerships. And, John Deere and Moline, they don't want to deal with that many dealerships. They'd rather have fewer. And the consumers are saying the same thing. Like, we like bigger banks that have more capabilities, that are broader. But don't be mistaken. The 4,600 banks, 4,400 of those being smaller than 50 billion in assets, it's the lifeblood of America. It's the reason that Michael can go and place a real estate deal in any part of America.
Right.
That's the lifeblood, and it's the secret sauce. You don't get it in any other country, anywhere.
Right.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Yeah, this is super interesting to me, very interesting because even in another industry, I'm also in the automobile industry as an automobile auctioneer, and I still do that mainly because I just love it. I grew up in it; it was my first passion.
I love going to
And
Tuesday auctions at my friend at Dealers Auto Auction here in Oklahoma City.
yeah, there you go. I
It's a
probably know some of
blast.
those
6 lanes
auctioneers.
of action, and I
Yes.
can't keep up.
Yeah, I know. Aren't they great? They're just fascinating to me, and
Yes,
I
they
just
are.
love them and whatnot. And you know, in the waning part of my career now, I'd spend more time at the mom and pop shops. I got out of the big corporates, and you know, and they just tend to do what corporations do, right? They just work you for less money, and so I held on to my family members, if you will, and because I just enjoy working with them, and some of them I've been there longer than their kids have been alive, and so it's the one or two that I still work is like that, but. One of them just switched banks, and went to a bigger bank and got a line of credit off cash flow alone. The smaller bank that he was dealing with would have never offered that. Would have never even considered that. And so,
Did this bigger bank happen to have some real knowledge in the auto industry? Do they have some real expertise?
well, I mean, look, we can blanket if we need to. It's Synovus, that offered him the line.
They're a powerhouse in the southeast of the U.S. and
Yeah, and I really don't know the answer to that other than that definitely.
I think that they do. I would have to go through my Rolodex to find my my auto guys within my auto finance guys within from probably some old Wells Fargo and B of A and even G Capital's dealer finance and wholesale finance arm. It's a small world. I mean,
It is.
Yeah.
It's like so many things that, it looks big, but then when you get in there, like I probably know, a handful of the auctioneers that worked at big Oklahoma City auction just by being in the business for 32 years. And there's only so many auctioneers across the world. And so even though it's a big group, it's a small group to us. And I'm sure for you, it's like that also. But that's one example of where, it wasn't anything wrong with the bank that he had. But stepping up into a bigger bank with more opportunity for that, still in the small business arena, could offer him a tool that other people they didn't have in their portfolio. Is that the kind of thing that, I mean, obviously not to him being
it is. So I think, if you think about like a cash flow deal versus like a collateral asset-based deal, at the end of the day, in banking, there's really only one kind of loan. It's a loan that gets repaid, and any other kind of loan is a bad loan, right?
Right.
And so the question is, how do you make sure that somebody's going to repay you? There's two things that you need. One is the willingness. This is the most important one. Their willingness to repay you. And the second one, which is it's still important, but it is secondary, is their ability to repay you. Might seem like that one's more important than the other one, but believe me, the willingness to repay is much more important because somehow people that are willing to repay you and are eager to repay you for their good name and for to whether it's to avoid the shame, maintain honor, because they have a virtuous character, whatever the reason is that they want to repay you, the ability to get the next loan, that's why they want to repay you. They find a way to repay you every time.
Yep.
It's come hell or high water, they find a way to repay you.
They really do. But sometimes what I call street level banking, I guarantee you have the right term for me, right? But I deal with some regional banks, and Bank of OZK is one of them. Not the cheapest money you're ever going to get a deal by no means, but I've got a great relationship with my guy. I've been with him.
Money's a little pricier in Arkansas for some reason.
Yeah, they're pricey. Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what they say? It's not illegal. It's Arkansas. And but the thing about him is, I have perfect credit, never missed a payment, never been late on a payment, I'll pay back every thousands of loans that I've ever had. And, but they're not going to budge that box now. I can tell you, but
some of that is also driven, not speaking specifically about Bank OZK, but some of that is also driven by regulatory pressure.
Sure.
So they're going to have both internal, this kind of belts and suspenders. They're going to have internal pressure from three lines of defense. Their primary like credit chain. They're going to have a loan review function. Then they're going to have an internal audit function. then beyond that, regulators are going to come in and do an exam on a 2 or 3 year cycle. Or more frequently, if the bank is in trouble in one or more areas, and they're going to be criticized for different things. So for good reason, a decent sized regional bank like Bank OZK, they don't stray far from the reservation.
Right.
They just can't.
Right.
Why? Because the regulators are going to come in and put the hammer down. So and they're sound, from my experience working in Arkansas and interacting with different banks, Bank OZK, they got their act together.
Right? I would agree. I really would. Even though there's some deals I go and they're like, nah, I can't do it. And I get staying in your wheelhouse too. So there's definitely, I'm singing their praises too. But I know that there are other banks that will service that need, and they'll be like, you know what, we'll look at it for you. Yeah.
I would say you want to right size your loan to the bank. And then you also want to be self-aware of whether your deal is a little outside the box and it's going to take more effort. So what do I mean by that? If you are looking for $100,000 loan to take down a little single family rental in your hometown that, like I got a little single family rental behind my house and it's great. Right. Yeah. If I want to refinance that loan, I know which bank I'm going to. I'm going to go to the smallest bank in town. They're going to love me for it. They're going to say, hey, the money's in your account, and why don't you come by and sign the loan docs later this week? Right? Just easy going. Now, if you want $1 million loan, I'm going to go to the next biggest, when I say the smallest bank in town, we have around a $200 million bank in our town. The next, I want to borrow $1 million, and it's to buy a small apartment complex that's also, maybe it's 2 towns over. Well, I want to look broader and I want to go a little bit bigger, but not too big. So I want to probably stay for that $1 million loan. I want to stay below $1 billion in assets when I'm looking at that bank. There's a lot of decent size community banks that have between 1 and 10 branches that have some coverage in the geographic area where that apartment complex is. That's what I'm going to go for. Then I skip over a state and I find the $10 million strip center that is and maybe I won't go outside the box yet. $10 million strip center, cash flowing, good occupancy, solid deal, not over levered. Then I'm going to go to somewhere between a $1 billion and $10 billion bank it's probably a small or mid-sized regional bank that has some coverage in that state, but also in my state. Right. And I'm going to take that deal to them. And then I go and I want to buy a car dealership, used car dealership that has 3 locations. It's a killer deal. A guy just wants to retire, but I need some cash. I'm going to put $100K in my cash, but this guy wants, and there's going to be a seller note. It's complicated and so on. I can't go too big because it's a used car dealership with 3 locations, but it's 3 states over. Oh man, I got to find somebody that knows used car dealerships, that knows me, and is in that size range. That's going to be a tougher deal. That's a tough putt.
Yep.
I don't know if that resonates at all.
Oh, absolutely.
Perfectly.
Yeah. It's great analogies to how banking works and how you should be looking at this, because what about businesses? Cause we deal with a lot of that want to scale. Maybe they need lines of credit. Maybe they need, if their cash flow, maybe they need some security when it comes to that. Signature loans, things like that. What would you say to the small guy getting started?
If you're certainly good personal credit history is a great place to start.
Right?
Yeah,
you got to start. I told all my kids and everybody at work, take care of your credit. Right? Your credit will take care of you.
Yeah, be a person of your word. I think developing a relationship with your local bankers. There's probably 5 community bankers. You can find them at the Chamber of Commerce coffee hour. You can find them at community events. You can just look them up on the web. right?
Right.
And they're going to have job titles like loan officer, relationship manager, things like that. And you want to take them to lunch, and you don't need to spend too much time talking about your business. You need to spend time developing a relationship personally. So they need to know who you are even before they know what you do. And then, hopefully you do that relationship building before you have a need. Sometimes you can't because, hey, I don't have those relationships and I have a need right now. So, yep, you got to march around and build those relationships in a hurry. But even better if you get to know those people. Like when I moved to the town that I live in now, I moved here in 2013, so 11 years ago. And probably month 2 or 3, I just called the guy that ran the local bank, the bank president of his small bank, and his name was Doug Tippins. And I went in and I met with Doug. Sure enough, we became fast friends. I'm friends with his son. I've gotten a couple of loans from him, but I think I got a loan from him maybe a year after we met. Small loan. I repaid it pretty quickly. It was, $100K or something to refinance a deal for a little bit. And then, but I'm friends with him. I'm friends with his son. The bank that he was working for, which was owned by a local attorney, sold to a bigger bank. He's doing bigger things there. His son has been at 3 different banks in the last 10 years. We're good friends. I could walk in to him or his successor that's at that same bank branch that's now part of a bigger bank any day. And I mean, within reason, I could ask for any amount of money I want to ask for that makes sense.
Right.
And they're gonna instantly know Brian's a great guy. He's definitely going to repay us. What's the business deal? Are we well collateralized? Is this within the box of our credit chain? And the answer is going to be yes for Brian.
That's really great advice.
That's what it feels like. It feels like an 11-year relationship that you have the background to go and ask.
Yep.
Yes.
And so, no, this is really good advice, and we appreciate obviously you sharing, because I know there's a wealth of information. We could go on for days about it because you're clearly this backwards and forwards, and banking's important to the listener out there. I think you've given a lot of good advice from the small to the growing companies.
Yeah,
and you mentioned about like business loans or even business acquisition loans. Don't underestimate the importance of the Small Business Administration. It's a unique thing within the United States. I'm not an SBA expert. We all became experts pretty fast during the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP loans that came out, right? And I helped community banks during that time with some consulting engagements to help automate some of the processing because they were seeing more volume than they had ever seen. And these community banks stepped up. They figured out, we can process a lot more loans in less time if we put our minds to it. It was impressive. And then the SBA, the 7A program, the 504 program, look into those. In essence, it's like the federal government being your cosigner on a loan. Really helps enhance the credit of of your credit worthiness. Will allow you to access more funds for a longer period of time at a lower interest rate than you otherwise probably could. It's not the cheapest money, but it's cheaper than what you probably need to find equity to replace the amount of money that they're willing to give you.
Right.
Yeah. I love this conversation because, like we said in the very beginning, these relationships are underestimated all the time. Yeah. Well, we're going to segue now to asking a question that we ask of most of our guests, Brian. And it's, first of all, we're both foodies. We love to eat. We love to cook. So first question to you is, do you like to cook?
All the time. Yeah.
Okay. What is your specialty meal?
Oh man, specialty meal. It'd probably be a ribeye. It's not complicated, but my friend Stephen Waugh, who's a Culinary Institute of America trained chef, he told me, Brian, keep it simple. Take that ribeye, get it to room temp, hit it with a little bit of olive oil, then put the Montreal steak seasoning on it, cover it really good. And then I do all sorts of preparations, from a sous vide to a reverse sear to just straight up on the grill. But if I have my preference, it's probably a sous vide to around 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm not picky on the time. I mean, just getting it up there and getting it all the way through at 110 degrees F. And then I like to go out to my grill, which I've kind of jerry-rigged with an extra gas regulator, and it gets to a very, very hot temperature. And I like to put a nice Pittsburgh sear on it, and then I eat it.
I love it.
Pittsburgh sear. I love that. That's a first. Yeah. And again, you can't underestimate just a simple ribeye, right?
It's simple.
Yeah. Oh, it's my favorite cut too.
Mine too.
Yeah. We always like to sling our guests, that little side ball right there, but for several different reasons. Yeah, because we like to cook, and people got great ideas like yours there.
We like to steal the secrets.
Gives us ideas, and just keep on rocking. So
I don't know if it's a secret, but it's red-blooded Americans got to eat a ribeye.
I know it.
I say in Oklahoma we have 5 million cows and 3 million people, so we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, a lot of work to do.
Send some our way.
I love it. Well, Tanya's been trying to wean me off of meat, for years. But thank goodness.
Don't hate me, Brian.
She is. She's like me. We tell people we're these days we're pesca vegetarians.
Hey,
right. We're sort of coining this phrase ourselves, right? We eat a lot of fish, we eat a lot of vegetables. We really care about what we eat. But I told her, honey, I love you, but I can't see me ever giving up that ribeye.
Me neither, honestly.
Give up the lamb chops. I'm not going to give up my ribeye, but
I don't want to see the anemic Michael.
Yeah, exactly. Don't you worry, you won't, Brian. I haven't gone up completely off the deep end over here. Just trying to get toward the little healthier side of nature. But Brian, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. You brought a lot for us to think about. And hey, tell the audience how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I try to write there as frequently as I can and share some info about banking and family travel and adventures. And then our business at visbanking.com. It's VIS, like visualization, visbanking.com.
Very good. We appreciate your insight, Brian, and your time.
Thanks so much, Michael and Tanya. Great to be with you.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.